Thank you, Dr. Biju Kumar. Thank you, Dr. Pushpangan. Thank you to CISSA, our partners for so long, and the International Biodiversity Congress, so needed in today's time. We are, of course, on the one hand, celebrating Biodiversity Day, but we are also remembering an amazing life, a century-long life of Sundarlal Bahuguna, who for half a century has been my guide. I always say that I did a PhD in the foundations of quantum theory from Canada, but I did my PhD in biodiversity from the University of Chipko. And Sundarlal and Bimla Bahuguna's ashram at Silyara was a very, very important part of that learning, beginning from the early 70s. And I want to begin by connecting to some of the key things that Sundarlal, as distilled from our freedom movement, from the writings of Gandhi and Miraban and Kumarappa, distilled from the knowledge of his mother, a typical Garhwali woman. And I learned through Chipko that nature provides everything. Garhwal women are the economy. And that's why I think that the graph that has been made by the Biodiversity Secretariat of Biosphere, Society and Economy is wrong. We need to correct it from IBC. Nature has her economy. The biodiversity is an economy. Economy means oikonomia, the art of living. And it's biodiversity that is the master at the art of living. Then linked with biodiversity, with consciousness that we are part of the earth and not separate from her, not her masters, then is society's economy, the sustenance economy of people that have lasted in indigenous cultures over thousands of years. We did not wipe out the places where we lived. Colonialism was based on destroying Europe, then coming to our lands to destroy it. And today's destruction of the Amazon is not by the indigenous people of Amazon, who have lived there for thousands of years, and not as wild people, but as farmers, as cultivators in the forest, with the forest. That the forest and the farm is separate is also a mechanistic divide in the industrial mindset. Our forests, our farms. And my father was a forest conservator, and in his time, he said there were more trees on the farms of UP than on the forests of UP, which had lots and lots of forests anyway. But we do farming like the forest. And Albert Howard recognized this when he was sent to India in 1905, that on the farms of India, you see a forestry, you see farming like the forest, and you see farming done on the same piece of land over the thousands of years. We did not destroy our biodiversity, our homes, our land. So the economy on top is purely the market economy. And Aristotle has given it a different name from economy. Oikos is ecology and economy. Chrematistics, making money, greed, the cancerous disease of not knowing limits, not respecting life, not having reverence for species, for ecosystems, for the planet as a whole. The planet has been named Gaia by James Lovelock, based on the Greek goddess for the earth, when he realized that the earth organizes her own temperature. She organizes her climate. She is a living organism. So the earth as a living organism is the reason we call her Bhumi, we call her Prakriti, we call her Vasundhara, and the Andean people call her Pachamama. And every part of the world, till industrialism, till colonialism, the earth was Terra Madre, our Mother Earth. Colonialism reduced it to terra nullius, the empty land. And this idea of emptiness then moved into life. When I started Navdanya, I heard these chemical companies talking about owning life. And they said the seed is empty till we put a gene into it. And if you think this couldn't be, It's in the records of the Monsanto case against our Article 3J, which does not allow patenting of plants, animals, and seeds. And we worked very hard with the parliament at that time to introduce this recognition that life and biodiversity is not an invention. But Monsanto was trying to challenge this clause. And even 3 years ago, they were in the Supreme Court of India saying the seed is an empty container. It's the genes we put into it and the chemicals we put into it that give it the muscle to become living. That is the level of shallowness, emptiness of the mind. I wrote a book long ago, inspired by Chipko, called The Monocultures of the Mind. But I think it is much worse than purely a monoculture, because it must empty out biodiversity in order to fill monocultures, mechanistic monocultures. So Sundarlal always talked about ecology is the permanent economy. So we need a new map saying the biosphere's economy, the real economy, people's sustenance economies, the millions of livelihoods tied to biodiversity, the small farmers, the tribals, the fishermen, all the women who take care of animals, that second economy. And then the third is the market economy. The third economy is very, very small in terms of fulfilling needs. It is very big in consumption of resources and destruction and creation of pollution. And it is very big when measured in a very mythical measure of money alone. Now, money has become finance. And as finance, it is 70, 100 times bigger than all the goods and services of the world, because money can make money. With a digital, you can just multiply the value of money in the digital currency world. Cryptocurrency can just make money, except that it actually consumes resources. The server of the cryptocurrency in Iceland uses more electricity than the rest of Iceland, which is why there's this big back and forth between Elon Musk, whether he'll use Bitcoin or he'll not use Bitcoin for his electric cars. Now, a lot of people are thinking, wow, the electric car, a solution. But Bolivia had a coup for the lithium. So we need to look at the full footprint of the market economy. And we need to take all the economies into account. This, to me, would be the biggest tribute we can pay to Sundarlal Bahuguna and the amazing learning of our civilization. The second thing is, all living things are not linear, one-dimensional machines performing one function. They are multi-dimensional, interactive, self-organized systems. And the mindset that needs to change. To recognize biodiversity is to change the way we look at life. I'm so glad Dr. Gangadharan will speak about the Ayurvedic view. I did quantum theory and I realized the mechanistic view is inadequate. In quantum theory, you don't have linear causation, Cartesian causation. You have contextual causation. You have contextual observation. And that contextual causation is exactly what Ayurveda is based on. Ayurveda is based on potential, not essential qualities, because nothing is essential in the world. Everything is in the making. It is in the evolving. And biodiversity, Ayurveda, quantum theory have the same teaching. The mechanistic worldview is a 400-year distortion, which has brought the world to the brink. When we started the campaign to protect our biodiversity from this new data piracy and this new biopiracy of all our knowledge, why do we need Harvard and Gates to collect all the data? They won't collect it. Our ASHA workers will collect it on the ground and on smartphones, send it to them. And then they'll do messaging and they will do behavior modification. Now, do we need to learn from Gates what the Sadhyam of Kerala is? No, all that Gates can provide us is a GMO golden rice, which has failed, Impossible Burger, which has 14 patents with it, as made of GMO soybean, which has destroyed Brazil, it has destroyed Argentina, it has destroyed the biodiversity of America, it has destroyed the pollinators. He can teach us how to depend on lab-made breast milk. So, having watched him now and having written 3 books on him, I can tell you his messaging will be The sadhyam is ours, we'll patent it, we'll patent elements of it, but you eat fake milk, you eat fake food. And to dear, to all our colleagues, I would say, please join this campaign. And I think we really need to defend and know our biodiversity. When I started to save seeds, I realized the companies were patenting seed. And I said, a patent is a threat. That's what it really is, that this is our monopoly. But if we continue to do the right thing for biodiversity, we continue to do the right thing for the earth, then there is no way a patent will work. It stays like an empty paper. So all this data piracy and this new language of data is the new oil, steal, 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 the project actually says data capture around our food and nutrition. Now something is very, very wrong. So in preparing this campaign, I asked my colleagues to look at our sayings. And this is what we found in the Ayurveda. It says, Mitrasyahas chakusa sarvani, and my Sanskrit is 0, so don't forgive me for my pronunciation. Sarvanini mutani samiksha. Sabhi jivo jeev jai vividta ke prati sahriday, a common heart, compassion, ka परिचय देना communication के साथ ये ही जीवन का लक्षण है. We are a civilization that says communicating with love and friendship with all living beings is the end of life. Biodiversity is not raw material to be mined. It is not an asset on a portfolio for the new profits that the financial world is thinking of. Sadly, there is a fat report called the Dasgupta Review. All the nice words that we speak, but inside it, they are talking about how biodiversity can only be left to the hands of financial asset management funds, and it's what they decide that's profitable will be how biodiversity is protected. Exploitation has never been a path of conservation. I've spent my life protecting nature and biodiversity. I do it from love. I do it from reverence. I do it from the sacredness of life, our sacred groves, our sacred temples, our sacred seeds. That's why Navdanya has been a biodiversity, India has been a biodiversity-rich civilization. But even worse, on the health side, on the human capital side, there's actually an assessment. We are in the midst of COVID, which, as Dr. Biju Kumar laid out, is because we are invading into forests, destroying habitats, creating a disharmony so that viruses who are safe on animals become dangerous to us. And that's because we are not leaving the space for the animals, and we are not leaving the space for the viruses to stay home. But we are in the middle of the COVID crisis, and this is how they want to measure. In this biodiversity, assessment of Dasgupta Review, to measure the value of mortality and morbidity in money terms, you have to construct an abstracted, non-real person, a statistical life. But the statistical life is not the same everywhere. The human life is the same everywhere. We are all equal. And a statistical life is based on incomes. So in poor countries, we are 1/15 the value of a human life in rich countries. I had written a speech for one of our environment ministers when they were trying to bring this calculus at the Earth Summit related to climate change and damage, and we had called it the arithmetic of genocide. And when this kind of arithmetic is brought to assess biodiversity according to its commercial value, not its value to the infrastructure of life, we are engaging in the arithmetic of ecocide. So we need to start recognizing biodiversity as the infrastructure of life, and growing that infrastructure, valuing that infrastructure, not in money terms, but in life terms, in terms of culture, in terms of spiritual value, in terms of health values, in terms of well-being, in terms of social cohesion, in terms of livelihoods. This is our work in India. This is our work in India, special for two reasons. One, we are an ecological civilization, and it would be a betrayal on our part to not build that civilization to contemporary times. and make it totally relevant. The second reason why this is so important is because the other day I was attending to celebrate Biodiversity Day. They're starting to talk about biodiversity. We should not talk about biodiversity anymore. We should just talk nature in the abstract, a human statistical life in the abstract. Abstraction has been the way to destroy biodiversity. Biodiversity is unique for the smallest soil organism, unique for the tiniest of butterflies and bees. Biodiversity's uniqueness is what allows us to think of values as intrinsic values to life. So let me now share with you how in our work in Navdanya, over the last 30 years, we have found how biodiversity is health, from the soil to the plants, to our health and our gut microbiome. Just like Monsanto defined soil, a seed as an empty container, the fertilizer industry defined soil as an empty container, which gets its fertility by pouring synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, which is responsible for greenhouse gases 300 times more damaging to climate change. And sadly, just because the billionaires made a lot of money through climatistics, they're now writing recipes on how to deal with climate change. And there is actually a promotion and celebration of synthetic chemical fertilizers as something that must spread more. And even though it is known that it is a greenhouse gas emitting nitrous oxide, it kills all the soil organisms. And how rich are the soil organisms? Let me just share with you. Healthy soils are full of diversity. 1 gram of organic soils contains 30,000 protozoa, 50,000 algae, 400,000 fungi. 1 teaspoon of living soil contains 1 billion bacteria, which translates into 1 ton per acre. 1 square meter of soil contains 1,000 earthworms, 50,000 insects, 12 trillion roundworms. They are working a way to create soil fertility, but not just create soil fertility, they are giving us health. The mycorrhizal fungi, which is what Albert Howard found our soils were so rich in 1 cubic meter, 25,000 kilometers of it, 25,000 in 1 cubic meter. Can you imagine how much work they're doing? And what they're doing is bringing nutrition where it's needed from where it's available. And a lot of scientists are now talking about how the soil food web has more neuron activities going on than in human brains and in the internet web. These machines are pathetic compared to the work that biodiversity is doing. Now, that's not all. These fungi are then interacting with roots of the plants. And I have seen that chemical fertilizers, because they just put minerals on the top, the shallow roots are very shallow. Whereas when we put organic manure into the soil, when we do the law of return, the roots go very deep. Darwin called the root the brain of the plant. And a unique part of the plant root, the root apex, is where this interaction takes place. 1 single rye plant is covered with root hairs, over 14 billion of them, a combined length of 6,600 miles. Every rootlet has hairs. At its end is a root apex. These are the communication systems of biodiversity. Every root apex acts as a neural organ in the root system. In contrast, the human brain has only 68 billion neurons. About 16 billion of them are in the cerebral cortex. Plants with larger root systems have larger neurological activity going on. Soils with more organic matter have more neurological activity going on. We are talking about an intelligent universe where the intelligence is created by biodiversity herself. Our work in Navdanya, which began with seed saving, we have now found that soils rich in biodiversity produce nutritious foods. The soil becomes much, much richer, and the decrease, I'll share with you the decrease in chemical soils. Nitrogen has gone down 14%, it's gone up 99% in organic soils. Zinc is very, very vital trace element. It's up 14% in our soils, it's down 37%. And zinc deficiency is leading to a lot of depression and is a very big reason why there's so much stress. And I'm sure Dr. Gangadharan will talk about how health as one health means the whole being, and the whole being in a whole universe, a healthy universe. Magnesium is linked to attention deficit disorder, down 17%. We are growing a lot of commodities. We are not growing food. We are not growing health. And trade in more commodities is leading to more dollars in the profits of the Monsantos through royalties for GMO seed, of Cargills, of the fake foods and processed foods. But this then is leading to more disease. 75% of the chronic diseases today are because of an industrial food system. All of them are metabolic disorders or disorders of deficiency, because this system has attacked our gut microbiome. We have increased the soil organisms that create the nourishment in the soil that's taken up by the plant that is then fed to us through the gut microbiome. The fungi in our soils are 50% higher, and the beneficial bacteria are 241% higher. If we have to survive, we have to shed the mechanistic, militaristic mindset, and we have to start moving to a recognition that we are living organisms in a living earth. The Western science has been based on what Emran Maya, who's done a brilliant work on the mind gut, and I've visited him. He's bringing out a new book. He just wrote and said he's sending me a new book on the mind-gut relation. He says, for decades, the mechanistic militaristic disease model set the agenda for medical research. As long as you could fix the affected mechanical part, we thought the problem would be solved. There was no need to understand its ultimate cause. We are just beginning to realize that the gut, the microbes living in it, the gut microbiota, the microbiome constitutes one of the major components of these regulatory systems and the signaling molecules that they produce from their vast number of genes. 100 trillion. Can you imagine the complexity of our body? When I used to go to schools on nutritional literacy, and I would just ask the kids, what is food? And they learn this from their books. You know, seed is an empty container, Monsanto makes it work. Soil is an empty container, the synthetic fertilizer industry makes it work. Our bodies are run by food, which is fuel. We are a machine. This is what our children are being taught. And I would request both all our guests to ensure that our school textbooks, if there's one thing we can do through this period of the COVID pandemic, which has taken so many lives. Just yesterday, we lost Sundarlal Bahuguna, we lost Babagada Patil, who was our rural development minister, a very important farm activist. We lost Dinesh Mohan, who was a very, very important faculty of IIT Delhi. And these are just in my small circle. We are losing lives because we have the wrong paradigm of science that is anti-life, anti-biodiversity, anti-freedom, anti-people, anti-indigenous. It has declared war since colonial times on everything indigenous, everything living, everything free. And if even in this time we don't wake up with so many deaths, then there will be no wake-up time after this. Not only because COVID is a disaster, but we know the climate disasters. I mean, look at it. The Arabian Sea has never had cyclones. For the first time in our history, we had a cyclone that went all the way along the west coast and came and hit us. Our rains have just ended after 3 days. We have not had these kinds of disasters, And we know that in 10 years' time, according to the IPCC, it'll be too late to turn things around. And my work in Soil Not Oil, all the books I've written on climate change, biodiversity is the answer to climate change, not only because it has the capacity to draw down all the excess nitrogen in the air through chemical fertilizers, the excess carbon dioxide in the air because of fossil fuels, and convert it into the healthy plants through photosynthesis and healthy soils. It can heal the broken cycle. And I'm shocked and outraged that Mr. Perry, who is the climate czar of the United States, says we will aim for net zero, which means you will not reduce your emissions. It is not real zero. We'll aim for net zeros where the polluters will continue polluting. And in the next 50 years, come up with new technologies to solve the remaining problem of absorbing what we have emitted. And they are dreaming of putting carbon dioxide, not through living systems, not through biodiversity, but into cavities and into mines, which will lead to explosions. We don't have to wait. Biodiversity is here to work with us. We don't have to make the climate problem worse by now modifying the weather and doing geoengineering. I'm so glad the Harvard Gates experiment on Sweden to modify the weather through geoengineering has been stopped by indigenous people there. We are, even the Harvard and Gates capture of our nutrition data, we do need a nationwide movement on this. And I hope, Dr. Reddy, you will play a role. You are involved both as big, public health foundation, but also a Harvard adjunct faculty. Please help stop this biopiracy. Let's stop this arrogance and with no liability. But why is biopiracy important for our health? Not only because of all the plants that grow, that feed us, but that diversity of our plants is needed by our gut microbiome. And now people are waking up to the fact that India has the richest diversity of food. And Dr. Gangadharan will teach us about how Ayurveda is based on healthy eating and eating different tastes. And again, Maya says, the multitude of phytochemicals derived from a diet rich in diverse plants, combined with the array of perfectly matching sensory mechanisms in our gut, synchronizes our internal ecosystem, our gut microbiome, with the world around us. We are one health because we are one interconnected biodiversity, unique in every molecule, every cell, every organism, every ecosystem, but all acting in harmony. The world is a beautiful harmony of quantum porance from the tiniest level to the largest level. It is this quantum leap we need to make and break free of the mechanistic colonizing mind. And it is India's duty to do it. It's our duty to Sundarlal Bahuguna when he said, ecology is the permanent economy. The forests give us soil, water, and pure air. He said, they don't give us timber and money. This is our moment. Let's work together for a resurgence of our biodiversity knowledge, mind, gut, farms, forests. Thank you.